This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP, Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's March 11th, 2026. On this day in 2021, a digital collage by an artist known as Beeple was sold by the auction house Christie's for $69.3 million. It was a landmark, record-high sale that supposedly cemented non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, as the way for 21st century artists to sell their work. And it was supposed to be the way that investors could enter the art market in a digital age, buying up supposedly valuable, unique pieces of art that would only grow in value over time. 3 years later, the NFT market crashed, seemingly for good. The bubble had burst. According to an article published earlier this year in the British newspaper The Independent, roughly 95% of NFTs are now considered worthless. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. The story of NFTs is just the latest verse in a song that's played out over and over through history. Sometimes it's art, sometimes it's collectibles, sometimes it's necessary items that have become hard to get. Sometimes it's kind of investment, like stocks or real estate, that is usually solid, but is going through a phase of being overvalued. One way or another, it seems there are always people trying to tell you that if you just buy enough of this one thing, the value will skyrocket and you will end up wealthy. Think tulip mania in 17th century Holland, Beanie Babies in the 90s, toilet paper and hand sanitizer at the start of the pandemic, the real estate bubbles of 1980s Japan and early 2000s America, the dot-com boom from the early days of the internet, the stock market free-for-all that came before the crash of 1929. For whatever reason, someone somewhere is always convinced they've found the next big thing. And if the market for that item gets out of hand, the bottom falls out. Everyone involved loses. Now, cryptocurrency is one of those investment categories that some folks consider to have never been anything more than a bubble waiting to finally burst once and for all, but that others still insist is the future of doing business. And that's come to a head a couple of times here in Tennessee. First of all, there were the attempts by Jackson Mayor Scott Conger, who the New York Times once featured in an article called The Rise of the Crypto Mayors. He has suggested the city convert part of its municipal building into a crypto mining operation. Last year, the state had to tell him that it would not be legal to pay employees in Bitcoin, saying the city could offer to convert employees' paychecks to the cryptocurrency, but only after it's first paid out in standard American dollars. And now there's a bill in the state legislature that would require the state of Tennessee to invest up to 10% of the state's assets in Bitcoin and accept the cryptocurrency as a form of payment for certain taxes. Now, the decision about whether or not to go forward with that idea includes a lot of different components beyond whether or not Bitcoin is true currency. Although that is a legitimate issue to keep in mind, too. Just for reference, some experts say it actually should be considered a commodity, which is a different beast. That's actually how the federal government has categorized it. But aside from all that, since we're talking about legislation, politics is part of the equation. So far, the bill has one sponsor in the House and one in the Senate. Both are Republicans, but neither is in the inner circle of leadership these days. On the other hand, there are folks in the White House right now who just love crypto, so making a move in that direction could be a way Tennessee's GOP might try to curry favor. Cost is another factor. The state's Fiscal Review Committee prepares something called a fiscal note for every bill, estimating how much money it would actually take to make a proposal a reality. The fiscal note for the Bitcoin bill points out that there would be a lot of administrative and regulatory factors. The state treasury would need to have staff devoted just to Bitcoin issues. Plus, there'd be things like transaction fees. Altogether, getting started would cost at least $1.5 million, plus about that much every year just to maintain the system. I say at least because the fiscal note's authors kind of hedge their bets while pointing out that they can't really say just how many positions would need to be devoted to this stuff. So there may be more salaries involved than the fiscal note is able to reflect. And that's all before taking into account the volatility of cryptocurrencies. A look around the financial press so far this year shows multiple predictions that 2026 will be the year that cryptocurrency finally takes a giant crash. Who knows? It's not the first time that alarm has sounded, and the big crypto players like Bitcoin are still around. but they've had some very big crashes in the past. It's not as stable as traditional currency. And so if this bill moves forward, one big question state leaders will have to consider is how much of an appetite they have for financial risk when they're trying to decide what form the state's money will take. In just a few minutes, this week's edition of What Wear Wednesday, that's coming up after the newscast.
Here's the mantra I think about at WPLN. We connect the dots. It captures a mindset that our journalism is not merely about the latest press release or proclamations by officials. Instead, we can develop expertise, dig deeper, and look to history to understand what's happening now. I'm Tony Gonzalez, news director. When I'm planning coverage and editing stories, the best part is being part of a team that's curious about our community and invested in its future.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Members of Tennessee's Air National Guard are involved in Operation Epic Fury in the Middle East. Governor Bill Lee confirmed in a press conference yesterday that troops were deployed in February before the United States and Israel launched their bombing campaign on Iran. But the governor tells the Tennessee Lookout he's not sure how many Tennessee Guardsmen are there or what bases they may have come from. Tennessee has Air National Guard facilities in Nashville, Knoxville, Memphis, and Chattanooga. Once the Guard is nationalized, Lee loses authority over the service members and information on their whereabouts, aside from what the administration tells him. The deployment is unlike other recent Tennessee National Guard movements because there was no announcement. Earlier this year, the Guard sent out a news release about 20 Guardsmen heading to Kuwait. A similar announcement was made when hundreds of Tennessee soldiers were sent to Kuwait 2 years ago. U.S. Representative Andy Ogles of Tennessee is under fire for comments he made on social media saying that Muslims, quote, do not belong in American society. The Council on American Islamic Relations has labeled Ogles an anti-Muslim extremist, writing that his comments go against the First Amendment, which protects religious freedom. Ogles is up for re-election this year, and his district includes a diverse swath of Nashville, home to thousands of Muslims. Ogles flipped Tennessee's 5th congressional district less than 4 years ago when Democratic-leaning Nashville was split into 3 different districts. His seat is considered the most vulnerable of those 3 in the coming midterm elections, as he's been out-fundraised by his Democratic opponent. The Cook Political Report has shifted his district from solidly Republican to likely Republican. A bill that would require Tennessee schools to verify students' immigration status is one step closer to passage. WPLN's Camelia Burris reports on how some say this move would be a time-consuming and costly burden for school staff.
The bill originally would have allowed schools to refuse undocumented kids. It also could have cost the state over $1 billion in federal education funding. So the bill's sponsor, Republican Representative William Lamberth, amended the measure to keep from losing those funds. Now it requires schools to report how many of their students can't prove their legal status. But Lori Brown, CEO of Intrepid College Prep in Antioch, testified at a committee hearing that this will burden school staff.
And so when we're asking schools to take on an additional burden and we're not providing any fiscal allocation, we're saying make it work with what you have. If we're making it work with what we have to take away from someone else to make it happen. And I'm asking where do we take that from? That's not impacting our kids' education.
She also says teachers would need costly training to help determine someone's immigration status. The bill is headed to the State House floor next week. Camelia Burris, WPLN News.
Some red dyes are already banned from public school meals. This week, the General Assembly expanded that ban to a long list of petroleum-based food dyes. WPLN's health reporter Catherine Sweeney tells us why.
Artificial food coloring has been one of the Make America Healthy Again movement's main targets. Tennessee lawmakers tied themselves to that movement earlier this year when they brought founder Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to the Capitol and cheered on his Eat Real Food message. Representative Michelle Renaud, a Hamilton County Republican, carried the bill in the House. She tapped a common MAHA talking point, parental choice.
Parents can still purchase whatever they choose for their families. This legislation only applies to meals served through school nutrition programs where children do not have the ability to choose what they are served.
For more than a decade, a faction of nutrition advocates has pushed for limits on these dyes. Some research shows they're tied to hyperactivity and other behavioral issues, especially in kids. Critics in the nutrition world note that foods with these dyes also tend to be very high in sugar. They say that's the real problem. Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
The bill has to make it off the governor's desk to become law. A years-long fight over a small reform to protect domestic violence victims in Tennessee came to a frustrating end last week. WPLN's Paige Flager reports.
For years, advocates have asked the Domestic Violence State Coordinating Council to alter a state form. It's called a firearms dispossession affidavit, and it's required in cases where an abuser is court-ordered to give up their guns. But the form doesn't require the name or address of the person that they're giving their guns to, a loophole that puts victims in danger. At their last meeting, the DV Council voted to recommend that individual county judges change the form. The group chose this path instead of uniformly changing the form for all courtrooms across the state. Becky Bullard works for the Nashville Office of Family Safety.
It's disappointing to see that a body that is there to really create change for domestic violence victims and survivors wouldn't use its authority to make such a small change that could have an impact in this work.
Members of the council encouraged the public to contact their lawmakers to change the form through legislation. There was a proposal to do just that, introduced because of WPLN's reporting with ProPublica, but it faced opposition from the NRA and won't be moving forward. Paige Flager, WPLN News.
2 Democratic state lawmakers are relaunching an effort to legalize recreational marijuana for adults 21 and up and use the proceeds to fund transportation projects. Senator Heidi Campbell and Representative Afton Bain, both of Nashville, attempted to pass similar legislation last year, but it stalled. Now they're promoting the idea more publicly with a website, petition, and videos. The lawmakers highlight tens of billions of dollars in deferred highway and bridge projects and say a 15% sales tax on cannabis products could help Tennessee fix them. As an example, they point to Massachusetts, which has a similar population and generated nearly $300 million in tax from cannabis sales last year. The campaign coincides with Cannabis Day on the Hill today, when farmers and other cannabis proponents will gather to ask lawmakers for reform. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. St. Patrick's Day is next week, and there's more to do to mark the day in Nashville than just getting a pint of green beer. Marquise can tell you all about it.
I'm Marquise Munson, here with another edition of Nashville Public Radio's What We're Wednesday, keeping you up to date with the happenings in Nashville this week. Starting tonight through Sunday, the SEC basketball tournament is at Bridgestone Arena. Thursday night, Rat Boys perform at the Basement East, and Nashville bands The Sewing Club and Pressure Heaven open for MX Lonely at Dark Matter. Friday night, the Hives perform at Brooklyn Bowl, and Nashville's Book Not Brook album release show is at the Blue Room. Back at Brooklyn Bowl on Saturday for Cat Power, and on Sunday, the band Wednesday. Also on Sunday night, Diana Ross is at the Opry House. For more events, head over to WNXP.org/events. This week for What We're Wednesday, we feature the St. Patrick's Day Parade and Festival happening this Saturday in East Nashville's 5 Points District. Organized by Irish Network Nashville, their mission is to create opportunities for Irish Americans, and Friends of Ireland to connect through business, cultural, and community events.
My name is Conor Doolan, president of Irish Network Nashville. I describe the community here as growing between people moving here from different cities, people becoming more aware of what we have in the city. Like historically, Nashville was quite Irish in its roots. It was Scots-Irish and the Irish immigrants that built the first bridge over the Cumberland in the 1820s, and a pretty vibrant Irish community between the 1850s and the late 1920s. But it kind of goes away, that knowledge amongst people who are of Irish descent in Nashville. So what we've done at the network is we've restored parade tradition. East Nashville, in particular, 5 Points is where we've been located, going on 4 years. From 11 o'clock to 5 p.m. we have live Irish music throughout the footprint of the parade. This year we have the Irish Village. There's going to be vendors, food trucks, live music. There's 3 musical acts in the Irish Village. from 11 to 5. And then the parade itself, it's a meet-up at 9:15, steps off at 10 a.m., and then it proceeds around 5 Points itself. And I would say that would probably wrap up around 11:15. And then everything's free. So, I mean, it's great. And we have a kids zone and Boomba's there from 11 to 1 as well. So it's very family friendly. And we have all kinds of groups coming. We have groups from Ireland. And we have Nashville Fire Pipes and Drums, Nashville Predators will have a presence. Tempo from NSC will be there. You know, our headliner is Josh O'Keefe, great folk singer. He's making his Opry debut that night in partnership with us and the Opry. We also have a special guest from Ireland, Clodagh Lawler, singer-songwriter. She's actually a radio presenter in Ireland, and she's coming over in partnership with Aer Lingus. So she's going to be kind of all around our events.
I don't know if you can see the changes that have come over me. These past few days I've been afraid that I might drift away.
I guess what we're trying to do with the parade and through our work is to remind people that Nashville has an Irish heritage, and we're trying to join the two things together. There are people in Nashville that are of Irish descent, and then there's a lot of people who are new to Nashville who are actually kind of leading the way in a lot of our groups. The people that are leading the way are the actual Irish groups, societies, music and dancing schools, our sports club, and so on. They're the ones that are, the foundation of all of this. Our work is funded by the Irish government, and for the first time in history, about a year or two ago, we have a honorary consul from the government of Ireland appointed to the state of Tennessee. The Irish consulate's actually for the southeast is in Atlanta, so that's our point of contact with home. I think what people will associate, socializing and drinking with St. Patrick's Day, and that is fair enough. But where that comes from is the Irish mentality, is a celebration of life. And that would be reflected in our weddings, in our funerals, and in our wake traditions. So it's not just about drinking. There's a lot more to it. And Ireland as the island, north and south, has gone through a lot in a couple of 100 years. So these are times to meet friends and family and to celebrate. And in America, parade tradition, or anywhere where the Irish have immigrated to, this day gives them an opportunity to celebrate their identity, in an American context. America 250 is happening at the moment. There's also an Irish America 250 that's also happening simultaneously. And March is Irish American Heritage Month. We want people to come out and socialise, have a good time. And if they learn a little more about Irish culture, that's great. And if they're interested in any of our groups, we hope that they join on the day or join in the coming weeks.
For more information on the St. Patrick's Day Parade and Festival and other events happening this week, visit WNXP.org. My name is Marquise Munson, and thank you for listening to another edition of What Were Wednesday.
Down a glen came a Calpine's men, with a chavot slung behind them. 'Twas in a pub that they drank a sub, and up in the spike you'll find them.
Thanks for listening to the Nash Villager podcast. We take this look at Nashville news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. It really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one. And we'll catch back up tomorrow.